Alpha King Kayla Stonefang was a wolf who commanded the Northern Territories with an iron fist and absolute authority. He had rival packs bowing at treaty tables and ancient bloodlines seeking his favor. But the one thing he didn't have was a clue that his own execution had been scheduled for a winter's night inside his own fortress. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was supposed to be at the northern front. But when he walked through the servants' entrance 2 days early, the silence was deafening. He expected the warmth of hearth fires and the bustle of evening preparations. Instead, he found Sable, the quiet Omega maid, standing in the dark corridor like a ghost. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She pressed a single trembling finger to her lips and whispered 2 words that saved his life. "Stay silent." What Kayla heard next from the tower above didn't just break his heart. It shattered his entire world. Hello friends. Before we journey deeper into Kayla's story, I invite you to subscribe and share in the comments where you're listening from. Your presence here matters. Now, let's continue. The snow in the northern mountains didn't cleanse the land. It just buried the blood until spring. Kayla watched the white flakes strike against the dark mane of his warhorse as he rode alone through the mountain pass. This was unusual. The Alpha King of the Stonefang pack never traveled without his royal guard, a wall of warriors and steel. But tonight was different. Tonight was about exhaustion. He had told everyone, including Queen Isolde and General Magnus, that the campaign against the Northmen would take 5 days minimum. But the barbarian chieftain had been killed by his own son within hours of Kayla's arrival, a bloody coup that ended the war before it began. Disgusted by the savagery and bone-weary from months of conflict, Kayla had mounted his horse and ridden south immediately, leaving his battalion to handle the treaty signing. He wanted the one thing his crown usually couldn't grant him: peace. His horse's hooves crunched through fresh snow as the Mountain Gate fortress came into view. The iron gates should have recognized his approach, guards should have called out, torches should have blazed to life in welcome. Instead, the massive oak and iron barriers stood closed and dark against the twilight sky. The fortress loomed ahead, a mountain of grey stone and ancient power, silent against the winter storm. Kayla guided his horse around the eastern wall, avoiding the main entrance. He wanted to surprise Isolde. They had been arguing before he left, about his absence, about the constant warfare, about the future of their bloodline. He had claimed a beautiful silver pendant from the Northmen's treasure hoard, a peace offering. He touched the leather pouch at his belt as he dismounted near the servants' gate. The fortress was dark. That was wrong. It was barely past sunset. Usually, the windows blazed with firelight and life. Isolde hated the dark and cold. She kept fires burning in every room. Kayla unlocked the servants' entrance with the private key only he possessed, a secret passage known to no one else. The heavy wooden door swung inward without sound. He paid the master carpenter specifically to maintain every hinge in this fortress monthly. He stepped into the stone corridor, shaking snow from his fur-lined cloak. The smell of the fortress hit him, cold stone, pine smoke, and the faint herbal scent of the soap the Omegas used on the floors. He moved through the servants' kitchen. Empty. The massive hearth was cold, no evening meal being prepared. He frowned. Where was the night staff? Where was Margaret, the head cook? Where were the guards who should be rotating through the lower halls? A cold instinct crawled up his spine, the same feeling he'd had in the Blackwood Forest ambush 5 years ago. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was predatory. Waiting. Kayla loosened his leather sword belt, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of the blade at his hip. He moved softly through the corridor, his boots making no sound on the worn stone floor leading toward the great hall. He turned the corner toward the main staircase and froze. A figure stood in the shadows beneath the carved archway. Kayla's hand snapped to his sword, drawing 6 inches of steel in a blur of motion. "Don't move," he growled, his alpha voice echoing in the empty space. The figure gasped, stumbling into the sliver of moonlight cast through the narrow window. It was Sable, the Omega maid. She was young, perhaps 24, with dark hair pulled into a simple braid and wide, terrified eyes that seemed too large for her pale face. She wore the plain grey servant's dress that hung loose on her slight frame. She was clutching a bundle of cleaning rags like a shield, her knuckles bone white. Kayla lowered the sword slightly but didn't sheath it. He knew everyone who worked in his fortress, but Sable was relatively new, hired perhaps 4 months ago. She was quiet, efficient, and usually invisible in the way Omegas learned to be. Sable, Kayla said, his voice a low rumble that carried authority even in whisper. Where is everyone? Why are the fires out? Sable didn't answer immediately. Her eyes darted from his face to the top of the grand staircase, then back to him. She was trembling so violently he could hear the soft rustle of fabric against fabric. My king, she breathed, her voice barely audible. You're at the northern front. The campaign. Plans changed, Kayla said, taking a step forward. The war ended early. Where is Queen Isolde? Where is the guard? Sable's eyes went impossibly wider. She took a frantic step toward him, abandoning all protocol and hierarchy. She reached out with a cold hand, grabbing the leather strap across his chest, pulling him into the alcove beneath the staircase with surprising strength. Hey, Kayla began, his alpha dominance flaring at the uninvited touch. Share. Sable hissed, the sound sharp as a blade. She looked absolutely terrified, tears welling in her dark eyes. She pressed a shaking finger to her lips, her entire body pleading with him. Please, Your Majesty. Not a word. Stay silent. Kayla frowned, his annoyance warring with his warrior's instincts. He was the Alpha King. No one silenced him. But the terror radiating from her wasn't performance. This wasn't anxiety about protocol. This was fear of death. Why? He whispered, leaning close, his hand still on his sword. Sable pointed a trembling finger upward, toward the ceiling, toward the king's tower where the royal chambers resided. Because, she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion, they are celebrating your death. The words hit Kayla like a warhammer to the chest. His blood went cold, his battle-trained mind immediately shifting into tactical mode. The celebration of his death didn't make logical sense, but the wrongness saturating the air was undeniable. He signaled Sable to stay hidden in the alcove. He removed his heavy boots, leaving them on the stone floor. In his thick wool socks, he was silent as falling snow. He crept up the grand staircase, keeping to the outer edges where the ancient wood was most supported and least likely to creak. The fortress felt like a tomb around him, but as he reached the landing, he heard it, voices drifting from the king's tower. The door was partially open, spilling warm golden firelight across the dark corridor. Kayla moved along the wall, pressing his back against the cold stone. He inched closer to the door frame, his breath controlled, his every sense focused. Are you certain about the timeline, Magnus? A woman's voice asked. If the battalion returns and reports that he left early, questions will arise. It was Isolde. But her voice wasn't the sharp, complaining tone she'd used with Kayla for the past year. It was smooth, calculating, almost joyful. Kayla's grip on his sword tightened until his knuckles ached. Magnus. General Magnus Ironhide, his most trusted war leader. The man Kayla had raised from a common soldier, whose family Kayla had protected, who stood as Kayla's right hand in every battle. A deep, confident laugh rumbled from inside the room. Relax, my queen, Magnus said, the possessive phrase making Kayla's vision darken with rage. The messenger I sent ahead confirmed the story. As far as the battalion knows, their king fell in glorious battle against the Northmen. An ambush. Very tragic. Very heroic. And the actual Kayla? Isolde asked. The sound of liquid pouring into crystal drifted through the doorway. They were drinking his wine, the aged thornberry vintage he saved for victory celebrations. The actual Kayla, Magnus said, his voice dripping with arrogance, is supposedly buried in a northern snowdrift with a Northman's axe in his spine. The barbarians are signing confessions as we speak. Well, the ones I paid are. Kayla stopped breathing. He pressed harder against the stone wall, his entire body rigid with the effort of remaining silent. They had planned this. Orchestrated it. His death wasn't an accident or an assassination attempt. It was a carefully constructed lie. How long have you been planning this? Isolde's voice carried a note of admiration that made Kayla's stomach turn. 18 months, Magnus replied. Since the day you came to me in the training yard and told me you were tired of playing the faithful queen. Do you remember? A soft, intimate laugh. I remember. You had just defeated 3 warriors in succession. All that strength, all that power, wasted on following orders. Kayla's mind raced backward, recontextualizing every memory. 18 months ago. That was when Isolde had suddenly become interested in military matters, attending strategy sessions, asking questions about troop movements. He had thought she was finally taking interest in his work. Instead, she had been planning his murder. The hardest part, Magnus continued, was getting the loyal ones out of the way. Your old guard, the ones who'd die for you. I had to be careful. Reassignments, distant postings, missions that kept them away. Captain Torin was the worst, Isolde said. He suspected something. Torin had an unfortunate accident during a routine patrol, Magnus said flatly. Fell from his horse. Broke his neck. Very tragic. Kayla's breath caught. Torin, his childhood friend, his first lieutenant, hadn't died accidentally. He'd been murdered. How many others? And now? Isolde asked. Once the mourning period ends. Once the mourning period ends, Magnus said, his voice taking on a formal tone, I will publicly pledge myself as protector of the widowed queen. The Pax will accept it, they'll see it as stability. Within 6 months, we marry. Within a year, I'm not just general. I'm king. Our king, Isolde corrected, her voice sultry. Our kingdom, Magnus agreed. Everything Kayla built will expand. The southern territories are weak. The eastern Pax are fractured. We'll take it all. What about the Omega? Isolde's voice sharpened. That mousy little maid. Sable. She's been here too long. She cleans everywhere. She might have seen something. Kayla's pulse thundered in his ears. They were talking about the girl trembling in the alcove below. I'll handle her tomorrow, Magnus said dismissively. An accident. Perhaps she falls from the tower stairs. Or maybe a tragic fire in the servants' quarters. These things happen. Make it clean, Isolde said. I don't want complications. There won't be any, Magnus assured her. I've already replaced most of the household staff with people loyal to me. The few remaining, well, they'll either swear loyalty or follow Sable's example. The casual way he discussed murder, multiple murders, sent ice through Kayla's veins. This wasn't just about him. Magnus was planning to purge anyone who might question the new order. To us, Isolde said, the crystal chiming as glasses touched. To the future. To freedom, Magnus added. From the old ways. The old rules. The old king. Their laughter echoed through the corridor, light, celebratory, completely unburdened by guilt. Kayla had heard enough. His hand tightened on his sword hilt. He could kick open that door right now. End them both. It would be justice. It would be satisfying. He shifted his weight, preparing to move. A hand closed around his wrist, small, cold, urgent. Kayla spun, nearly striking out, but stopped himself. It was Sable. She had crept up the stairs behind him, silent as death itself. She shook her head frantically, her dark eyes wide with desperate warning. She pulled on his arm, tugging him away from the door with surprising insistence. Kayla mouthed silently, I can end this. Sable pulled a small object from her apron pocket, a polished piece of glass, angled to reflect around corners. She held it up, positioning it to show him what lay beyond his line of sight. In the reflection, Kayla saw them. 6 warriors in the corridor beyond the tower chamber. Fully armed. Waiting. His jaw clenched. If he burst through that door, he might kill Magnus and Isolde, but he'd be trapped. The warriors would swarm the narrow tower stairs. He'd die in the room where he'd slept beside his treacherous queen. Sable tugged his arm again, pointing toward the servants' corridor, the one leading back down to the lower levels. Kayla looked at the tower door one last time. He could hear Isolde laughing, that musical sound he'd once loved. He memorized it. He would remember this moment. Use it as fuel. He sheathed his sword and nodded to Sable. She turned and moved down the corridor with practiced silence, Kayla following. They reached the servants' stair, a narrow, steep descent used by the Omegas and household staff. Sable descended quickly, her feet finding every quiet spot on the worn stone steps. They reached the lower level. Sable didn't stop. She led him through the servants' kitchen, past the cold hearth, through a storage room filled with sacks of grain and dried herbs. At the back of the storage room, she pushed aside a heavy shelf. It swung on hidden hinges, revealing darkness beyond. A hidden passage. Kayla whispered. Sable nodded, slipping through. Kayla followed, pulling the shelf closed behind them. They stood in absolute darkness. There's a ladder, Sable whispered, her voice close to his ear. It leads to the old wine cellar. The one from before the fortress was expanded. I sealed that cellar, Kayla whispered back. 30 years ago when I renovated. You sealed the main entrance, Sable corrected quietly. But the original builder, your grandfather, he was paranoid. There are 3 ways in. I found the architectural drawings in the archive room. Kayla felt a strange mixture of admiration and suspicion. You read architectural drawings? While cleaning. I read everything, she said simply. When you're Omega, you're invisible. People don't notice. I had time. How long have you known? Kayla asked, his voice hardening. About the conspiracy. Silence stretched between them in the darkness. 3 weeks, Sable finally whispered. I heard them in the winter garden. I didn't know what to do. Who to tell. Everyone loyal to you has been sent away or dealt with. Why didn't you run? Kayla demanded. You could have left. Saved yourself. Where would I go? Sable's voice cracked slightly. I'm Omega. No pack. No family. No protection. At least here I knew the danger. That's not an answer. Another pause. Then, do you remember 6 months ago? The merchant in the market square. He was beating his Omega daughter because she dropped a basket of apples. Kayla frowned in the darkness, searching his memory. Vaguely, he recalled the incident. He'd been passing through on routine patrol. You stopped him, Sable continued. You gave the girl sanctuary in the fortress kitchens. You said no Omega should live in fear under your rule. The memory crystallized. A young girl, maybe 16, cowering in the dirt. The merchant raising his hand again. Kayla had intervened without thinking. It was instinct, not policy. That girl was my cousin, Sable whispered. The only family I had left. You saved her. So when I heard them planning your death, Her voice broke. I couldn't let them win. Not after what you did for her. Kayla stood in the darkness, processing this. He had saved someone's family member without knowing it. And now that small act of basic decency was the thread keeping him alive. We need to move, Sable urged. They'll search the fortress soon. When they don't find you in the obvious places, they'll expand the hunt. Where does this passage lead? The old cellar connects to the northern drainage system. It exits near the frozen river, about half a mile from the fortress walls. Show me, Kayla said. Sable's hand found his in the darkness, small, calloused from work, trembling slightly. Follow me exactly. Some of these steps are rotted. They descended into the depths of the fortress. Kayla had built this place with his own hands alongside his warriors 30 years ago, raising it from the ruins of his grandfather's keep. He thought he knew every stone, every passage, every secret. He had been wrong. The air grew colder and damper as they went deeper. The stone walls were older here, rougher, cruder than the upper levels. This was foundation work from generations past. How did you find this? Kayla whispered as they navigated through pitch-black corridors. The archive room, Sable replied, her voice barely audible. I clean it every week. There are maps, original construction documents, letters from the builders. I started reading them because... She paused. Because words were the only thing I owned. They moved through the darkness with Sable guiding them by touch and memory. Her confidence in these hidden spaces was remarkable. She navigated turns and obstacles without hesitation. You memorized the layout? Kayla asked. I have a good memory, Sable said. It's how Omegas survive. We watch. We listen. We remember everything. Above them, muffled through layers of stone, Kayla heard shouting. Boots thundering on floors. The search had begun. They know you're in the fortress, Sable whispered urgently. Magnus will seal all the exits. He doesn't know about this one, Kayla said. He will soon. He has the entire household staff under his control now. Someone will remember the old passages, the sealed cellars. We have maybe an hour before he pieces it together. They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Sable turned left without hesitation, leading them down a passage so narrow Kayla's shoulders nearly brushed both walls. Here, Sable said, stopping. Feel the wall. Kayla's hands found cold stone, then wood, old planks nailed across an opening. The wine cellar entrance. It's been sealed for decades, but the wood is rotted. We can break through. Kayla braced himself and shoved. The wood splintered with a crack that sounded deafening in the enclosed space. They both froze, listening. Silence above. The search hadn't reached the lower levels yet. They squeezed through the broken boards into the old cellar. The smell hit immediately. Dust, mold, ancient fermentation. There are supply stores down here, Sable whispered. I found them last month when I was exploring. Old emergency provisions. Some might still be usable. Why were you exploring abandoned cellars? Kayla asked. Because I wanted to know all the ways out, Sable said quietly. In case I ever needed to run. The honesty in her voice struck him. She had been planning her own escape routes, expecting danger. And instead of using them for herself, she was guiding him. The drainage tunnel, Kayla prompted. Where? Sable led him across the cellar, their feet crunching on debris and broken pottery. At the far wall, she knelt and ran her hands along the base of the stone. Here. There's a grate. The old builders used it to drain flooding. It connects to the mountain runoff system. Kayla knelt beside her, feeling the iron grate. It was rusted but intact. This will make noise when we open it. I know, Sable said. But it's our only option. Unless you want to fight through Magnus's warriors. Kayla's warrior mind raced through tactical options. His assets, 1 sword, the element of surprise lost, and an Omega Maid who knew the fortress's secrets. Magnus's assets, dozens of warriors, control of the fortress, and time to organize. If we go through this tunnel, Kayla said, where does it leave us? Outside the walls. But exposed. No cover for at least 200 yards. If they have sentries posted or if they've deployed scouts. We'll be visible, Kayla finished. Vulnerable. Yes. And if we stay, they'll find us eventually. These cellars are large, but finite. Magnus is thorough. He'll search every inch. Kayla made his decision. We go. Now. Together they worked the grate loose. The rusted iron fought them, but finally gave way with a screech of metal on stone. They both winced at the sound. Above them, the shouting intensified. They heard that, Sable breathed. Move, Kayla commanded. The tunnel beyond the grate was barely wide enough for a man. Water trickled along the bottom, runoff from the winter melt. They crawled through on hands and knees, the stone scraping against Kayla's shoulders. Behind them, they heard crashes, someone breaking through to the cellar. Your Majesty. Magnus's voice echoed through the underground chambers. I know you're down here. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Kayla and Sable crawled faster. The tunnel seemed endless, stretching into darkness. Kayla's hands found ice-cold water, then mud. His breath came in controlled bursts, warrior discipline keeping panic at bay. Sable moved ahead of him, somehow navigating the pitch-black passage. There's a turn coming, she whispered. Sharp right. They took the turn. Behind them, Kayla heard voices in the tunnel now. Magnus had sent warriors in after them. How much farther? Kayla asked. 50 yards. Maybe less. They crawled through freezing water and ancient stone. Kayla's knees ached, his shoulders screamed, but he pushed forward. This was survival. This was war. Finally, blessedly, he saw it. A circle of grey light ahead. The exit. They emerged into the winter night, gasping and soaked. They were at the base of the fortress's northern wall, near the river. Ice had formed along the banks, and snow was falling again, heavy, wet flakes that clung to everything. The river, Sable panted. We need to get to the river. It'll mask our scent if they bring tracking wolves. Kayla grabbed her arm. Sable. Before we run. I need to know. What's your plan after this? Where do you think we can go? She looked at him, snowflakes catching in her dark hair, her servant's dress soaked and muddy. I don't have a plan, Your Majesty. I'm just trying to keep us both alive for the next hour. Call me Kayla, he said. If we're going to survive this together, we're equals now. Her eyes widened. I'm Omega. I'm a king without a kingdom, Kayla interrupted. And you're the only person in this entire territory I can trust. That makes us partners. Before she could respond, howls echoed from the fortress. Not wild wolves, organized, military. Magnus had released the hunting pack. Run, Kayla said. They sprinted through the snow toward the sound of rushing water. Behind them, torches appeared on the fortress walls. Shouts rang out. The hunt had begun in earnest. They crashed through underbrush, icy branches tearing at their clothes and skin. The river loomed ahead, dark, fast-moving, deadly cold. We'll freeze, Sable gasped. We'll die here if we don't, Kayla countered. The water will hide our scent. It's our only chance. The howls grew closer. Through the falling snow, Kayla saw shapes moving between the trees, massive wolves, battle-trained, closing in. He grabbed Sable's hand. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They plunged into the icy water together. The shock of the cold water drove the air from Kayla's lungs. The river was glacial melt, liquid ice that bit through flesh straight to bone. Beside him, Sable gasped, her small frame already shaking violently. The current grabbed them immediately, pulling them downstream with brutal force. Kayla kept his grip on Sable's hand, fighting to keep both their heads above water. Rocks loomed out of the darkness. He twisted, using his body to shield her from a collision that would have shattered ribs. Behind them, on the riverbank, the hunting wolves appeared. 6 massive beasts, their eyes reflecting torchlight. But they stopped at the water's edge, pacing and snarling. The river was too fast, too dangerous even for them. Keep moving. Kayla shouted over the roar of water. Downstream. Let the current take us. They stopped fighting the river and let it carry them. The world became a chaos of freezing water, darkness, and the occasional glimpse of the night sky between waves. Kayla's warrior training kept him focused. Control breathing, maintain grip on Sable, watch for obstacles. They tumbled through rapids that battered them against submerged rocks. Kayla's shoulder struck stone, pain exploded through his arm, but he didn't let go of Sable. Her face was pale in the moonlight, lips already turning blue, but her eyes remained alert, determined. A fallen tree appeared ahead, branches reaching across the current like skeletal fingers. Kayla pulled Sable close, wrapping both arms around her as they crashed through the smaller branches. Twigs tore at their clothes and skin, but they broke through to the other side. The current finally began to slow as the river widened. Kayla's feet found purchase on the rocky bottom. He pulled Sable toward the far bank, away from the fortress side. They crawled onto a rocky outcrop, both shaking so violently their teeth chattered. Fire, Sable stammered through chattering teeth. We need. I know, Kayla said, already moving. His hands were nearly numb, but warrior training was muscle memory. He searched the rocky outcrop, finding an overhang that provided shelter from the wind and concealment from the river. Under the overhang, he found what he needed: dry deadwood protected from the snow, dead pine needles, even some dried moss growing in the cracks between rocks. Strip, Kayla commanded, his own fingers fumbling with the clasps on his leather armor. What? Sable's eyes went wide. Your clothes are soaked. You'll die of cold before Magnus finds you. Strip to your undergarments, wring everything out. We need to dry these or we won't make it through the night. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She turned away, modestly peeling off her servant's dress with shaking hands. Kayla did the same, removing his outer layers, wringing out water. The winter air bit at his exposed skin, but he worked methodically. This was survival, nothing more. He arranged stones in a small circle, built a tiny fire using the driest materials. His hands were so numb he had to try 3 times with his flint striker before sparks caught. Finally, a small flame flickered to life. Here, Kayla said, keeping his eyes averted as he gestured Sable closer. Body heat. It's not inappropriate, it's survival. Sable crawled close to the fire, wrapped in her thin underdress. Kayla sat beside her in his underclothes, and they huddled together. Slowly, painfully, warmth began to return to their frozen limbs. That was insane, Sable whispered, staring at the small fire. We could have died. We would have died if we stayed, Kayla replied. He draped their wet outer clothes on rocks near the fire, positioning them to dry without burning. The river was our best option. They sat in silence for several minutes, the only sounds their breathing and the crackle of the fire. This close, Kayla noticed details about Sable he'd never seen before, the small scar on her collarbone, the calloused palms of someone who'd worked their entire life, the quiet strength in her eyes despite her Omega status. We can't stay here long, Sable said finally. Magnus will send scouts downstream. They'll search both banks. I know, Kayla said. But we need to warm up enough to move, and we need a plan. We can't outrun them forever. Where can we go? Sable asked. Every pack in the region knows you. Magnus will have sent word. Not to everyone, Kayla interrupted, an idea forming. There's one pack he wouldn't dare contact. Sable looked at him, confused. The Shadow Pack, Kayla said. My enemies. Her eyes widened. The Shadow Pack? They've been raiding your borders for 20 years. Alpha Theron would kill you on sight. Maybe, Kayla admitted. But Magnus would never think I'd go there. And Theron, he's my enemy, yes. But he's an honorable enemy. He doesn't deal in deception or backstabbing. He challenges openly, fights fairly. That's insane, Sable breathed. You have a better idea. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No. But going to your sworn enemy for help. Makes me unpredictable, Kayla finished. Magnus trained under me. He knows how I think, how I strategize. He'll expect me to contact old allies, call in favors, rally loyal forces. He won't expect me to walk into Theron's territory and ask for sanctuary. And what do we offer Theron? Sable asked. Why would he help you? Kayla touched his chest, where beneath his wet undershirt rested a waterproof leather pouch. Inside were documents he always carried. Maps, supply routes, defensive positions. Information, Kayla said. Magnus has restructured my entire military. New positions, new weaknesses. Everything Theron would need to know if he wanted to exploit them. You'd betray your own pack's defenses. They're not my pack anymore, Kayla said bitterly. Magnus stole them. I'm offering Theron intelligence about an enemy fortress. And I'm offering him something else, alliance. The Shadow Pack and what remains of my loyal forces, united against Magnus. Sable stared at him. That's actually, strategically sound. I've been king for 30 years, Kayla said. I didn't get here by being stupid. A sound cut through the night, mechanical, modern. They both looked up. Against the pre-dawn sky, a small object flew overhead. A drone, equipped with thermal imaging. Down. Kayla hissed, pulling Sable against the cold rock, away from the fire's heat signature. The overhang concealed them, but barely. The drone hovered, its camera lens scanning the riverbank. Kayla held his breath, his arm protectively around Sable. Both of them pressed into the shadows. After an agonizing minute, the drone moved on, following the river downstream. Magnus is using technology now, Sable whispered. He's not just hunting traditionally. Which means we're running out of time, Kayla said. Our clothes won't be fully dry, but they are dry enough. We move now, before first light. They dressed quickly in the still damp garments. Kayla's leather armor was heavy with water, but it would have to do. Sable's servant dress clung to her uncomfortably, but she didn't complain. The Shadow Pact territory is 3 days hard travel north, Kayla said. But Magnus will have patrols on all the main routes. Then we don't take main routes, Sable said, surprising him. There's an old trader's path through the high ridge. It's barely used anymore because it's dangerous. Narrow passes, risk of avalanche. But it cuts travel time to 2 days. How do you know about it? I read maps, Sable said simply. All the maps. In the archives. Kayla looked at this small omega who memorized fortress blueprints and ancient trade routes while pretending to dust shelves. You're full of surprises. I had to be, Sable replied. Invisible doesn't mean stupid. They were preparing to move when voices echoed across the river, Magnus's warriors, searching the banks. Torches bobbed in the darkness, coming closer. The high ridge path, Kayla whispered urgently. Where's the access point? 2 miles north, where the river forks. There's a stone marker. A howl cut her off. Not from across the river. From their side. Close. Through the trees, a massive wolf appeared. One of the hunting pack had crossed the river downstream and circled back. Its eyes locked on them, and it raised its head to howl again, alerting the others. Kayla's hand went to his sword. The wolf was battle-trained, vicious, 300 pounds of muscle and fang. Run, he told Sable. I'll hold it. No, Sable said. She grabbed a burning branch from their fire and hurled it at the wolf. The beast yelped, dodging the flames. In that moment of distraction, Sable grabbed Kayla's hand. Together. We run together. They sprinted into the forest as the wolf recovered and gave chase. Behind them, answering howls erupted. The hunt was closing in. 2 days of running through wilderness had stripped away everything except survival instinct. Kayla and Sable moved through the high ridge like ghosts, sleeping in brief, fitful shifts, always listening for pursuit, always moving. They had evaded 3 patrol groups and 1 drone sweep. Sable's knowledge of the terrain proved invaluable. She navigated them through passes Kayla didn't know existed, found water sources in unlikely places, even identified edible winter roots when their stomachs cramped with hunger. Now they stood at the black stone border, ancient markers of weathered stone that separated territories. Beyond lay Shadow Pact lands. Last chance to reconsider, Sable whispered. She looked exhausted, her face smudged with dirt, her servant's dress torn and filthy. But her eyes remained sharp, alert. We cross, Kayla said. We've come too far to turn back. They stepped across the border. The air felt different here, wilder, less controlled. This was Theron's domain, and it carried his pack scent. They didn't make it 50 yards before wolves appeared. 6 massive beasts materialized from the forest, battle-scarred, hostile, moving with coordinated precision. These weren't wild animals. These were warriors. The largest wolf, a grey-black beast with scars across his muzzle, shifted to human form. He was tall, muscular, covered in ritual pack markings. His hand rested on a long knife at his belt. You're on Shadow Pact territory, he said, his voice gravelly. State your business before we tear you apart. Kayla stepped forward, hands visible and empty. I am Kayla Stonefang, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I request sanctuary under the old law. The warrior's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with suspicion. Kayla Stonefang is dead. Fell in battle against the Northmen. We received word 3 days ago. The word you received was a lie, Kayla said. I was betrayed by my own general. I invoke the ancient right. Any wolf may seek sanctuary from an enemy pack if they come unarmed and without deception. The warriors exchanged glances. One growled low in his throat. This could be a trick. A trap. Then take us prisoner, Kayla said. Bring us before Alpha Theron. Let him decide. After tense deliberation, the lead warrior nodded. Bind them. Rough hands tied Kayla's wrists with leather cord. They were less harsh with Sable, recognizing her Omega status, but she was secured nonetheless. Surrounded by armed warriors, they were marched deeper into Shadowpact territory. The Shadowpact stronghold emerged from the forest, a fortress of dark stone built into the mountainside itself. It was older than Kayla's fortress, more primitive, but undeniably powerful. Watchtowers bristled with sentries. Warriors trained in courtyards. This was a pack built for war. They were brought into the Great Hall, a massive chamber lit by torches and a central fire pit. Animal pelts covered the walls. Weapons hung on display, trophies from generations of battles. At the far end, seated on a throne of carved blackwood, was Alpha Theron. He was older than Kayla by perhaps 10 years, his hair more grey than black, but his presence filled the room. Scars covered his bare arms, each one a story of survival. His eyes were hard as flint as he studied the prisoners. So, Theron's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Kayla Stonefang walks into my hall. Either you have tremendous courage or tremendous stupidity. Both, probably, Kayla admitted. Theron's mouth twitched, almost a smile. The last time we met, you had a blade at my throat. After the Battle of Broken Ridge. You could have killed me. You didn't. Killing you would have meant endless war, Kayla said. I wanted victory, not genocide. And now you want sanctuary. Theron leaned forward. From whom? The reports say you're dead. The reports are lies fabricated by General Magnus Ironhide. He conspired with my queen to orchestrate my death, seize my territory, and eliminate anyone loyal to me. Murmurs rippled through the assembled Shadowpact warriors. Theron raised a hand for silence. Convenient story, Theron said. You could be leading enemies here. This could be a ploy to get inside my defenses. If I wanted to attack you, I wouldn't come alone with an Omega Maid, Kayla countered. I'd bring an army. Then why come at all? Theron challenged. What do you want from me? Alliance, Kayla said bluntly. Help me reclaim my territory from the traitors, and I'll swear the Northern Territories to lasting peace with Shadowpact. No more border raids. No more skirmishes. True alliance. Theron's laugh was harsh. And I should believe my greatest enemy suddenly wants peace? You expect me to risk my warriors on your word? Not on my word, Kayla said. On the information I can provide. Magnus has restructured my entire military. I know every weakness, every supply route, every defensive gap. Information you could use whether you help me or not. Theron stood, descending from his throne. He circled Kayla like a predator assessing prey. You'd betray your own pack's secrets. They betrayed me first, Kayla said coldly. Magnus is planning to expand his territory within 6 months. Guess whose lands he'll target first? That made Theron pause. Mine. Yours, Kayla confirmed. He considers you weakened by years of constant raiding. He's wrong, but he believes it. And he's already preparing. Theron's eyes narrowed. You have proof of this? Before Kayla could answer, Sable spoke. Her voice was quiet but clear, cutting through the tension. I have proof. Every eye in the hall turned to her. An Omega speaking unbidden to an Alpha was unheard of. Kayla tensed, ready to intervene if Theron took offense. But Theron simply studied her. Speak, Omega. Sable stepped forward, her bound hands clasped in front of her. Despite her bedraggled appearance, she stood straight, meeting Theron's gaze. My name is Sable Nightwhisper. My father was Garen Nightwhisper, military strategist for the Eastern Pax before he was killed in a coup. I was raised on tactics and maps. And I spent 4 months in Kayla's fortress, invisible to everyone. I saw everything. Heard everything. Theron's expression shifted, recognition flickering in his eyes. Garen Nightwhisper. I knew him. Fought beside him once, years ago. He was brilliant. He looked at Sable with new respect. You're his daughter. I am. And I know things. Troop movements. Supply schedules. Weapon caches. Most importantly, she paused for effect. I know that Magnus is planning an assault on your northern border. There's a supply convoy moving up the pass road in 4 days. Silver weapons, specifically designed for killing Alpha-class wolves. The hall went deadly silent. How do you know this? Theron demanded. Because I overheard General Magnus discussing it with the Queen. They thought I was just a stupid Omega cleaning the floors. But I was listening. I'm always listening. Theron looked between Kayla and Sable. If this is true, if there's really a convoy carrying silver weapons on my border road, then you're telling the truth about the conspiracy. Send scouts, Sable said boldly. Verify what I'm saying. The convoy will be there in 4 days, coming from the Southern Army, 20 guards, 3 wagons. If I'm lying, you can execute us both. And if you're telling the truth? If I'm telling the truth, Sable said, then you know Kayla isn't the enemy anymore. Magnus is. And Magnus is planning to destroy you using everything Kayla taught him. Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to his captain. Send our fastest scouts to the pass road. I want eyes on that convoy. If it's there, I want it intercepted and brought here. He looked back at Kayla and Sable. You'll remain here as my guests. Guarded guests. If your information is accurate, we'll talk alliance. If it's not. He let the threat hang. It's accurate, Sable said with absolute confidence. Kayla looked at her with newfound amazement. She had just gambled both their lives on intelligence she'd overheard while scrubbing floors. And she'd done it with the poise of a seasoned negotiator. Theron gestured to his warriors. Take them to the East Tower. Comfortable quarters, but post guards. No one enters or leaves without my permission. As they were led away, Theron called after them, Kayla. Your maid has more strategic sense than most of my advisors. Hold on to her. I intend to, Kayla replied. The East Tower room was sparse but clean, far better than the dungeon Kayla had expected. 2 beds, a small hearth with a fire already burning, and a narrow window overlooking the training yards. 2 guards stood outside the locked door. Sable collapsed onto one of the beds, exhaustion finally overwhelming her. I can't believe I just did that. You were brilliant, Kayla said, moving to the window. Below, Shadow Pack warriors trained with brutal efficiency. Risky, but brilliant. If I'm wrong about the convoy. You're not wrong, Kayla interrupted. I saw your face when you spoke. You're certain. I heard them discussing it, Sable said quietly. Magnus was bragging about the silver weapons. Said they'd cut through alpha wolves like butter. He was excited about it. Kayla's jaw tightened. He always did love new weapons. They fell into silence, both processing the past days. Finally, Sable spoke again. What happens if Theron helps us? If we actually take back your fortress? Then I rebuild, Kayla said. Differently this time. Better. Before Sable could respond, the door opened. 3 Shadow Pack warriors entered, followed by an older woman with grey-streaked hair and sharp, calculating eyes. The Omega comes with us, the woman said. Alpha Theron's orders. Kayla stepped between them and Sable. Where are you taking her? To verify her claims, the woman replied. She says she knows military strategy. Theron wants to test that knowledge personally. Sable stood, straightening her ruined dress. It's fine. I expected this. Sable, Kayla began. If I can't prove what I know, we're both dead anyway, she said calmly. Might as well get it over with. She walked out with the warriors, leaving Kayla alone with his thoughts and his helpless rage. In Theron's war room, Sable stood before a massive table covered in maps. The room was filled with Shadow Pack senior warriors, all of them massive, scarred, suspicious. They looked at her like she was a mouse who'd wandered into a wolf den. Theron gestured to the maps. Show me. Explain what you know about Magnus's defenses. Sable approached the table, her bound hands making it difficult, but she didn't ask for release. She studied the maps, detailed renderings of Kayla's fortress and surrounding territories. Here, she pointed to the northern wall. Magnus moved the primary garrison from the east tower to here. It seems stronger, but it creates a blind spot in the eastern approach. He did it because he's planning offensive expansion. He wants forces positioned for attack, not defense. One of Theron's commanders scoffed. Lucky guess. It's not a guess, Sable continued, moving her finger across the map. He also rerouted the supply lines through the valley pass instead of the mountain road. Faster, but more vulnerable to ambush. And he dismissed half the night watch, replacing them with his personal mercenaries who don't know the territory. How do you know the night watch schedule? The older woman asked sharply. Because I served them tea every night at the changing of the guard, Sable replied. For 4 months. No one notices the Omega carrying the tea tray. Theron leaned forward, interested now. What else? Sable's voice grew stronger, more confident. Magnus is arrogant. He trained under Kayla, learned all his strategies, but he made a critical mistake. He assumed everyone else is as treacherous as he is. So he surrounded himself with mercenaries instead of building loyalty. Mercenaries fight for gold, not honor. They'll break if the tide turns. And the silver weapons convoy. Theron pressed. 4 days from now. 20 guards. 3 wagons. They'll stop at Miller's Creek to water the horses around midday. That's when they are most vulnerable, dismounted, distracted, predictable. The room was silent. Every eye studied her with new calculation. Theron nodded slowly. You learned all this while cleaning floors. I learned it by being invisible, Sable said. My father taught me that the best intelligence comes from places no one thinks to guard. And no one guards their tongue around servants. The older woman spoke. Theron, I served with Garen Night Whisper. This girl has his eyes. His mind. She looked at Sable with something approaching respect. If she's half the strategist he was, we'd be fools to ignore her. Theron made his decision. We verify the convoy information. If she's right, we'll discuss alliance. Take her back to her king. 2 days of waiting felt like an eternity. Kayla paced the tower room like a caged wolf. Sable spent the time sleeping, recovering from their ordeal. They were fed well. Theron wasn't cruel, but the uncertainty gnawed at them both. On the morning of the 3rd day, horns sounded. Kayla rushed to the window and saw riders approaching, Theron's scouts, returning. And behind them, 3 wagons under heavy guard. An hour later, they were summoned to the Great Hall. Theron stood beside the opened wagons. Inside, crates of silver-tipped arrows, silver-edged blades, silver ammunition. Enough to kill dozens of alpha wolves. Your Omega was right about everything, Theron said, his voice carrying grudging admiration. Every detail. The convoy was exactly where she said, when she said, guarded exactly as she described. He turned to Sable. You've earned my respect, Night Whisper. And my trust. Then to Kayla, your information is valuable. But more than that, you were right. Magnus is planning to move against my territory. I found orders in the convoy's documents. An assault on my northern border, scheduled for 12 days from now. Then we have a common enemy, Kayla said. We do, Theron agreed. Which brings us to strategy. Magnus holds your fortress. He has legitimacy in the eyes of the other packs. He controls most of your former territory. How do we counter that? Kayla stepped forward. We use the one advantage we have, surprise. Magnus thinks I'm dead. That gives us an opening. The memorial ceremony, Sable interjected. Both alphas looked at her. Magnus will hold a formal memorial to consolidate his power. It's the perfect opportunity to prove the king lives. Theron's eyes lit with understanding. A public revelation. In front of all the assembled packs. Exactly, Kayla said. If we expose the conspiracy publicly, with witnesses, Magnus loses all legitimacy. The other packs won't support a known traitor. When is this memorial? Theron asked. 5 days, Kayla calculated. Maybe less. Magnus will want to move quickly. Theron began pacing, his tactical mind working. We'd need to position forces outside the fortress without being detected. Then infiltrate during the ceremony. I know hidden approaches, Sable offered. Service entrances. Passages the guards don't watch closely. We'd need to identify which of Kayla's original warriors can be trusted, Theron continued. Can't do this with just Shadow Pack forces, it needs to look legitimate. Kayla pulled out a small leather journal he'd carried through everything. I kept records. Notes on every warrior in my command. Who's truly loyal, who's ambitious, who's honorable. The ones Magnus sent away, those are the ones we need. Can we reach them in 5 days? Theron asked. Some of them, Kayla said. Captain Rorik was sent to the eastern outpost. Sergeant Kira to the southern border. If we send fast riders, we can recall them. Tell them their king lives and needs them. Theron nodded. I'll send my fastest. Meanwhile, we plan the infiltration. He looked at Sable. You'll guide us through the passages. Yes, Sable said without hesitation. It's risky, Theron warned. If Magnus discovers we're coming, you'll be walking into a trap. Then we don't get discovered, Kayla said. We move fast, hit hard, and expose the truth before he can spin lies. Theron extended his hand, a formal gesture of alliance. Agreed. The Shadow Pack stands with you, Kayla Stonefang. Not because I've forgiven our past wars, but because Magnus threatens us both. And because your Omega convinced me you're worth the risk. Kayla gripped his former enemy's hand. When this is over, we'll have lasting peace. No more border raids. No more blood between our packs. Let's survive first, Theron said dryly. Then we'll discuss peace. They spread maps across the war table, Theron's commanders, Kayla, and Sable working together. What had been enemies became allies, unified by common purpose. Sable stood among them, no longer invisible, her insights valued and sought. She traced infiltration routes, identified weak points, calculated guard rotations from memory. At one point, Theron's second-in-command asked her opinion on timing, and she answered with such tactical precision that the grizzled warrior actually smiled. Your father would be proud, he told her. Sable's eyes glistened. But she stayed focused on the maps. As the sun set, they had a plan. Risky, audacious, but viable. 50 Shadow Pack warriors, the recalled loyal guards, and 2 people who'd survived the impossible, a king thought dead and an Omega who refused to be invisible. Theron raised a cup. To the memorial service. May it be memorable for all the wrong reasons. Kayla raised his cup in return. To justice. Sable raised hers last. To truth. They drank together, sealing their alliance. Outside, riders galloped into the night, carrying word to loyal warriors. The hunt had been Magnus's. But the war was about to become Kayla's. The warning came at dawn. A Shadow Pack sentry burst into the war room, breathless and bleeding. Magnus's forces, he gasped. Full battalion. 2 hours out. They're coming here. Theron's fist slammed the table. How did they find us? A captured hunter, the sentry said. Magnus released him 3 days ago. We thought it was mercy. It was tracking. Kayla's mind raced. He's been monitoring all enemy territories, waiting to see where I'd run. We walked right into his trap. 80 warriors, the sentry continued. Full armor. Siege equipment. They mean to destroy this stronghold. Can we hold? Kayla asked Theron. The Shadow Pack Alpha studied his maps. We have the high ground, strong walls, and 60 trained warriors. Yes, we can hold. But it'll be costly. He looked up. And it delays our plan. If we're fighting here, we can't infiltrate your memorial. Magnus knows that, Sable said quietly. That's why he's attacking now. Even if he loses, He buys time to consolidate power. Then we don't just hold, Kayla said, his voice hardening into command. We win fast. Crush them quickly enough that we can still make the memorial. Theron grinned, a fierce, wild expression. Now you're talking like a shadow pack wolf. I'll deploy forces on the walls. Archers on the high towers. We make them bleed for every inch. I'll fight, Kayla said. You're not part of my pack, Theron began. I'm a warrior, Kayla interrupted. And those are my former soldiers out there, corrupted by a traitor. Let me fight. Theron studied him, then nodded. You fight beside me on the wall. We show them what real alphas look like. I can shoot, Sable said. Both alphas turned to her. My father taught me archery. I'm accurate to 300 yards. Absolutely not, Kayla said. You'll stay in the... You don't command me anymore, Sable interrupted, her voice firm. I'm not your servant. I'm your ally. And allies fight together. Theron laughed. I like her. Fine, Omega. You shoot from the East Tower with our archers. Prove your father's training. They had less than 2 hours. The stronghold erupted into organized chaos. Warriors arming themselves, archers positioning, defenses reinforcing. Kayla was given shadow pack armor, and despite everything, it felt right. He was a warrior again, not a fugitive. He found Sable in the army, testing a bow. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do, she replied. Magnus wanted me dead because I was a loose end. I'm going to show him I'm much more than that. The battle began with howls, Magnus's forces announcing their approach. They came through the forest like a black tide, armor glinting, weapons raised. Archers! Theron roared. On my mark. The first volley of arrows flew. Several of Magnus's warriors fell, but the rest surged forward, shields raised. They hit the outer wall like a battering ram, wolves in both forms, some climbing, some breaking through barriers. Hold the wall. Kayla shouted, his sword singing as it met enemy steel. A warrior he'd once trained lunged at him. Kayla recognized him, a young fighter he'd personally promoted. Now the man fought to kill him. Their blades clashed. The warrior was good, but Kayla was better. 3 moves later, the warrior fell. Your king lives. Kayla roared across the battlefield. Magnus lied to you. I stand here, alive, betrayed by the man you follow. Some warriors hesitated. Others fought harder, committed to Magnus or unable to process the truth. Beside him, Theron fought like a force of nature. Brutal, efficient, unstoppable. Not bad for an old enemy, he called to Kayla. We're just getting started. Kayla replied, blocking an axe strike. On the east tower, Sable drew and released with mechanical precision. Her arrows found throats, hearts, the gaps in armor. She wasn't randomly shooting, she was targeting officers, commanders, the warriors directing the attack. One of Magnus's lieutenants, a massive alpha named Garrick, broke through the line, heading straight for Theron. The Shadow Pack Alpha was engaged with 3 other warriors, couldn't defend. Sable's arrow took Garrick through the throat at 280 yards. He fell, choking, dying. Theron glanced up at the tower, catching Sable's eye. He nodded once, deep respect. She'd saved his life. The battle raged for 2 hours. Bodies fell on both sides. The stronghold walls held, but barely. Magnus's forces were well-trained, well-armed, and desperate. Then, a horn sounded, not attack, but retreat. Magnus's remaining forces pulled back, dragging their wounded. They're running, a Shadow Pack warrior shouted. No, Kayla said, watching. They're repositioning. They'll try again. But the next attack never came. Instead, a single rider approached under a white flag. Kayla recognized him, one of Magnus's personal guards. Message for the Pretender King, the rider shouted. General Magnus says to enjoy your small victory. While you fight here, he consolidates power. The memorial proceeds tomorrow at sunset. All major packs will attend. By the time you reach the fortress, Magnus will be officially recognized as protector of the realm. You've lost, Kayla. This battle means nothing. The rider wheeled his horse and galloped away. Theron looked at Kayla. He's right. Even if we march now, we can't reach your fortress before tomorrow's sunset. Yes, we can, Sable said, climbing down from the tower. She was splattered with blood, none of it hers. The memorial is tomorrow at sunset. But it won't start exactly at sunset. There will be gathering, formalities, procedures. If we ride through the night, take the mountain pass instead of the main road, we can make it just after the ceremony begins. That's impossible, Theron's captain said. The mountain pass in winter, at night? We'd lose half our forces. Then we take a small team, Kayla said. Fast riders. Just enough to make the revelation. The main force follows as quickly as they can. Theron studied the maps. It's insane. It's our only chance, Sable said. And you're certain of the timing? Theron asked her. I planned these ceremonies for 4 months, Sable replied. Magnus will follow protocol because he wants legitimacy. That gives us a window. Theron made his decision. 20 riders. The fastest, the strongest. We leave in 1 hour. The rest of my forces will follow and provide support. They gathered in the courtyard, 20 Shadowpack warriors, plus Kayla and Sable. Each rider carried minimal gear. Speed was everything. As they prepared to mount, Theron's healer approached Sable with bandages. Your arm is bleeding, Omega. Sable looked down. She'd been grazed by an arrow and hadn't noticed. I'm fine. You're magnificent, the healer corrected, binding the wound. Your father would have been proud. Hell, I'm proud, and I just met you. Kayla checked his horse's saddle, but his eyes kept drifting to Sable. She'd fought like a warrior, strategized like a general, and never once faltered. Whatever she'd been when he first met her, that invisible, timid maid, it had been an act of survival. This was who she truly was. Ready? He asked her. She mounted her horse with practiced ease. Let's go crash a funeral. Theron raised his hand. For the Shadowpack. For justice. Ride. They thundered out of the stronghold into the gathering dusk, racing against time, against fate, against the lies that had stolen everything. Behind them, the dead were burning. Ahead, the memorial awaited. And Magnus had no idea they were coming. They reached the fortress as the last light bled from the sky. 20 riders, exhausted and battered, stood in the shadow of Kayla's own walls. Inside, torches blazed. The memorial had begun. The servants' tunnel, Sable whispered, dismounting. It exits in the wine cellar. From there, we can reach the gallery above the great hall. They moved in silence, wolves in the darkness. Sable led them to the hidden entrance she'd used to escape days before. One by one, they slipped inside. The tunnel was cramped with 20 warriors, but they moved quickly. Kayla's heart thundered as they ascended through passages he'd never known existed in his own fortress. Everything depended on the next minutes. They emerged in the gallery, a balcony overlooking the great hall. Below, hundreds of pack members filled the space. Black banners hung from the walls. At the center, on a raised platform, stood a symbolic pyre representing Kayla's funeral. And beside it stood Magnus, resplendent in ceremonial armor. Queen Isolde was at his side, dressed in mourning black that somehow looked triumphant. Today we honor a great king, Magnus's voice rang out. Kayla Stonefang gave his life in defense of our territories. He died as he lived, in battle, with honor. Kayla's hands clenched into fists. The lies tasted like poison in the air. In this time of loss, Magnus continued, we must ensure stability. I hereby pledge myself as protector of Queen Isolde and guardian of these lands. Together, we will honor Kayla's legacy and build an even greater future. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. The other pack alphas nodded. They were buying the deception. Magnus raised a ceremonial cup. To King Kayla. May his spirit find. May his spirit forgive you. Kayla's voice thundered from above. Every head snapped upward. Gasps erupted. Someone screamed. Theron's warriors threw open the gallery curtains. Moonlight flooded through the high windows, illuminating the balcony. And there, alive and undeniable, stood Kayla Stonefang. "Hello, Magnus," Kayla said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You started my funeral without me. How rude." The great hall exploded into chaos. People shouted, pointed, some fled toward exits. Magnus's face went white as snow, then red with rage. Isolde actually stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. "Impossible," Magnus breathed. "You're dead. You fell in the north." "I fell for your lies," Kayla interrupted, descending the gallery stairs. Theron and his warriors flanked him, weapons ready. "But I survived. And I've come home." "This is a trick," Magnus shouted to the crowd. "An imposter. Some desperate ploy." "Is it?" Kayla reached the main floor. The crowd parted before him like water. "Then how do I know about the Albanian deal that collapsed in 3 hours? How do I know you had a pressure valve installed on my jet? How do I know you've been planning this for 18 months? Magnus's expression flickered, uncertainty, then calculation. "You're paranoid. These are fantasies." "I heard you," Sable's voice cut through the hall. She descended the stairs behind Kayla, no longer dressed as a servant but in armor borrowed from Shadowpact. "I heard everything. Your conversations with the Queen. Your plans to kill me. Your silver weapon shipments to attack the Shadowpact." "A servant's word means nothing," Magnus began. "My name is Sable Nightwhisper," she declared. "Daughter of Garen Nightwhisper. And my word is backed by evidence." She pulled out documents, the ones recovered from the intercepted convoy. "Supply orders. Attack plans. All signed by you, Magnus. All proving you planned not just murder, but territorial expansion through deception." The assembled alphas surged forward, examining the documents. Their expressions hardened. "These are forgeries," Magnus shouted. "Created by my enemies." "Then explain," Theron said, stepping forward, "why your forces attacked my stronghold this morning. Why you've been stockpiling silver weapons specifically designed to kill alphas. Why every detail this Omega predicted came true." Magnus's eyes darted around the room, seeking support. But the other alphas were backing away from him, their faces showing disgust. Betrayal of one's own alpha was the deepest taboo. "You have no proof I planned Kayla's death," Magnus tried. "I have my wife's confession," Kayla said coldly. He gestured to Isolde. Tell them how you celebrated my death. How you and Magnus planned this together." Isolde was trembling now, tears streaming. Under the weight of hundreds of eyes, her composure shattered. "It's true," she sobbed. "All of it. We planned it. We wanted freedom. Power." The great hall erupted. Shouts of rage, disgust, betrayal. Several of Magnus's own warriors threw down their weapons in horror. Magnus drew his sword. "I won't go down without." He didn't finish. Kayla moved like lightning, disarming him in 3 precise strikes. Magnus's sword cutted across the stone floor. Kayla's blade pressed against his former general's throat. "I could kill you now," Kayla said quietly. "Part of me wants to." "Then do it," Magnus spat. "End it." "No," Kayla said. "You don't get a warrior's death. You get a traitor's judgment." He stepped back, addressing the assembled crowd. By ancient pack law, the crime of alpha betrayal carries one sentence. The pack elders will confirm. The 3 eldest alphas present, leaders of neighboring territories, conferred briefly. The eldest spoke. "The law is clear. Betrayal of one's alpha, conspiracy to murder, and false claim to leadership. The sentence is death." Isolde screamed. Magnus's face went grey. However, the elder continued, "The method is for the wronged alpha to decide." All eyes turned to Kayla. He could demand anything: torture, humiliation, prolonged suffering. He'd earned that right. But as he stood there, with Sable beside him and his future before him, he felt only exhaustion with the old ways. Death, he said simply. Quick. Clean. According to pack law. Carried out at dawn tomorrow. He looked at Magnus. I won't become what you are. Even for justice. The elders nodded approval. Magnus and Isolde were seized by warriors and dragged away to the holding cells. Their screams echoed through the hall. When silence finally fell, Kayla addressed his people. I built my rule on strength and fear. That created Magnus, someone who used those same tools against me. I won't make that mistake again. He gestured to Theron. The Shadow Pack is no longer our enemy. We are allies. True allies. The border raids end tonight. Theron stepped forward. Agreed. Let our packs build peace, not through fear, but through honor. The hall erupted in cautious applause. The other pack leaders approached, offering formal recognition of Kayla's claim. The political machinery was already moving. By morning, his restoration would be official. As the crowd began to disperse, Kayla turned to Sable. She stood quietly to the side, watching everything with those observant eyes. Come with me, he said. He led her to a private chamber off the great hall. Alone finally, the weight of everything crashed over them both. You did it, Sable said softly. You're king again. We did it, Kayla corrected. Without you, I'd be dead in that fortress. Or dead on the run. Everything that happened, every victory, came from your courage and intelligence. I was just trying to survive. You were being extraordinary, Kayla said. And I need to offer you something. He pulled out a small wooden box, recovered from his private chambers. Inside was a silver circlet, simple but beautiful. This belonged to my grandmother, Kayla said. She was the last person who told me truth without fear. He held Sable's gaze. I'm offering you the position of Queen's advisor. Official voice in my council. Authority over intelligence and strategy. Sable stared at the circlet. That's an incredible honor. It's not enough, Kayla said quietly. But it's a start. You're not invisible anymore, Sable. Not to me. Not to anyone. You're brilliant, brave, and you saved not just my life, but my entire pack. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay, Kayla said. Say you'll stand beside me as we rebuild. Not as servant and king. As partners. As equals. Sable reached out, touching the circlet with trembling fingers. My father used to say that real power isn't in ruling. It's in choosing who deserves your loyalty. She looked up at Kayla. I choose you. Not because you're king. Because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you can change. Because you're worthy of the loyalty I give freely. Kayla placed the circlet on her head. It caught the candlelight, transforming her from servant to something far more. Then together, he said, we'll build something better than what came before. 3 months later, the fortress had transformed. The old guard had been recalled, those loyal warriors Magnus had exiled. New alliances had been forged. The Shadow Pack border saw trade caravans instead of raiding parties. In the council chamber, Sable sat at Kayla's right hand, wearing the silver circlet. She'd just finished presenting a new intelligence network, Omegas throughout the territories who would serve as eyes and ears, finally valued for their observations. The council approved unanimously. After the meeting, Theron pulled Kayla aside. Your Omega advisor, he said with a grin. She just restructured your entire intelligence apparatus. Using servants and Omegas. It's brilliant. She is brilliant, Kayla agreed. You know, Theron said more seriously, the other alphas talk. They say you're different now. Softer. They are wrong, Kayla said. I'm not softer. I'm smarter. Magnus taught me that strength without wisdom creates monsters. Sable taught me that wisdom can come from anywhere, even from those we trained ourselves to overlook. That evening, Kayla found Sable on the battlements, looking out over the territory. What are you thinking? He asked. That I'm not running anymore, she said. For the first time in my life, I have a place. A purpose. A voice. You have more than that, Kayla said. He'd been carrying something for days, waiting for the right moment. He pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was a ring, not ornate, but beautiful. Wolf designs etched in silver. This is. Sable's breath caught. A choice, Kayla said. Not an order. Not an expectation. A question. He took her hand. Stand with me. Not as advisor, though you're extraordinary at that. Not as ally, though I treasure that too. Stand with me as partner. As equal. As queen. Sable's eyes widened. Kayla. I'm not asking because I'm king and you're omega, he said. I'm asking because you're the strongest, smartest, bravest person I know. Because you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. Because when I think about the future, you're in every vision. Tears streamed down her face. You're asking an omega to be queen. I'm asking Sable Night Whisper to be queen, he corrected. The woman who whispered stay silent and changed everything. She looked at the ring, then at him. Yes, she whispered. Yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger. And there, on the battlements where it had all started, they kissed, not as king and servant, but as equals who'd survived the impossible together. Below them, the fortress thrived. Above them, stars emerged. And for the first time in either of their lives, the future looked like something worth building. Word count, 1,100. Hey friends. I hope Kayla and Sable's journey moved you as much as it moved me. If their story of courage, betrayal, and transformation resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear a tale of resilience. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it Sable's brave gambit, the river escape, or that stunning memorial reveal? Your thoughts fuel these stories, and I read every single one. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most powerful among us are those we've trained ourselves not to see. Stay strong, stay loyal to those who deserve it, and I'll see you in the next story.